Welcome to the State of Freight podcast, presented by Dawson Truck Lines, hosted by Christian Snead.
Hello and welcome to Dawson Truck Lines monthly State of Freight podcast. I'm your host, Christian Snead. I'm the Senior Operations Manager at Dawson Truck Lines, a proud agent of Meadowlark Transport, and each month we'll be releasing these podcasts to discuss market trends, important industry topics, and sharing useful information that will bring awareness to small business owners and owner-operators more specifically. We'll be discussing several key items as we approach this mid-pandemic recovery, and there are three of them. The first one is government intervention. What is the government doing now? What has the government done in the past to get us through this pandemic? The second is 2021 forecasting. Where do we go from here? What does this year look like? And the last of them is best practices, which is really a self-help for revenue production for owner-operators. So since the last time we hosted a podcast, several things have changed, including celebrating the end of 2020 and welcoming 2021. We've also changed presidents that were seated here back in January. We've successfully also transitioned through the first pandemic downfall. We've also participated in the surging rebound that we had over the last several months and recovery since April. So our country has changed a lot of ways in which we purchase retail goods, the ways that we shop, and perhaps permanently. Obviously, online shopping was really popular. When we can't get within 6 feet of each other, restaurants and bars are closing, retail stores are taking new precautions, there's one thing we can do. We can pull out our phone, go to Amazon, go to eBay, we can go to Crutchfield and order car stereos, right? There's things that we can do with social distance and capabilities that we may not have had 15 years ago. However, brick and mortar also grew significantly, really since March, the last 2 weeks. It's up 18% year over year, but they've struggled for majority of the previous year. Stimulus checks usually went on clothing, electronics, home improvement, and that really helped pave the way for those brick and mortar stores to have so much money. Groceries were up 15%. I guess if we're going to sit at the house and work, for some of us and others out on the road, we're going to eat more. It's a stressful time, and a lot of habits have changed. The good news is airline, lodging, and transit here recently has increased. Those three categories were hammered. So since the last time we got together, airline tickets went to the floor. They didn't have capacity. They're starting to open back up, as is lodging and some transportation avenues. So we always have to make sure that we understand that when these things change, so does the demand requirements for the customers. And now customers expect several things, right? Expedited shipments. They want their product here quicker. Why? Because they're sitting around and waiting for it, right? They're also changed the online purchase options that we have. There's more and more retail stores that are going to online venues. And then also last mile delivery and delivering it right to our doorstep, even with the option of whether we want them to drop it off our doorstep, leave it in the driveway, or shake our hand on the way out. So topic one is government intervention, and we're going to start there. Currently, President Biden has a $1.9 trillion COVID recovery economic plan, and that includes several things. One thing that has continuously juiced up the market is stimulus money. We talked about it a moment ago with purchasing electronics and things like that. And so there's about $1,400 of additional stimulus payments, which should average about $3,500 a household that's expected to come here. Right now, they're not sure when that's going to be. They expect to approve the bill or make the final changes to the bill by the end of March, early April. However, the majority leader is pushing to have this bill passed by the end of this week. Topic 2, 2021 forecasting. Several things we need to consider before we get into this topic. And the first one is, this happens every year. The U.S. market has trucks that leave it and trucks that come back, freight that leaves then it comes back. It gets handled on a different mode of transportation. And year over year, the U.S. economy has been stable. So this year's no different. And so long as we see that government funding for the first quarter stimulation and adding that stimulus money into the market, the economy should come back and get online. And when it does, it should continue, and we should see that being a sustainable freight volume and an indicator for how our year is going to go. Now, we also have to consider a vaccine distribution. So that vaccine distribution and vaccination rates do play two parts. One is for market confidence and purchasing power, and the other is for how many people are actually opening and purchasing and spending money. So we have both President Biden and former President Trump have a projection or trajectory rate of the vaccine for the first and next 100 days for be about 100 million vaccines. I'm not saying we're on course for it, but that's their timeline. Dr. Fauci also mentioned that sometime in the fall that we should see things start to get back to a somewhat normal level, and I look forward to that. because I think this is a lot of what we have to deal with. And remember, this happens every year. I had a podcast back in January of last year. It was called Groundhog's Day. It was that movie with Bill Murray where every day you wake up and it's the exact same thing. The first quarter can feel like that. The first quarter can feel like, man, why am I in trucking? But we need to remember what happens. We need to relax. We need to build our escrows in the time that we can for these. But in my professional 20-year plus history, that all or most of the first quarters have been exactly the same way. The ones that have been elevated haven't always had the greatest years to follow. So let's not forget what happened last quarter and the quarter before that and the quarter before that. So we can't just wake up and think, why am I doing this, right? It's profitable. For a month or two, it might be a little less profitable. But when we start to hit it again, we'll remember and be rewarded on exactly why we're in this business. And to support this, going through quarter one, Ken Adams from DAT Solutions confirms it and says, while there are a lot of returns that keep capacity busy in January from retail purchases, that normally doesn't stretch past the month of January, but it does help the market. So the first couple weeks we see a pretty good return market, and depending on how much contract freight runs into the spot market from rejected tenders, that can also be up. But we shouldn't expect a real uptick until maybe March, and then again in May if that happens. So our predictions are that we're going to have a soft market with periodic upticks, including the stimulus release. When that gets done, we'll see an uptick, a significant one. Then things take off between March and May. And our goal is that that continues like it does on a normal trend for at least 6 months. Then we move into the time frame that Dr. Fauci and others say that we'll start to have some sort of herd immunity. And if that happens, we're out buying, we're spending, right? And we're going into a season that we should easily ride the freight wave into 2022 and beyond. Topic 3, best practices. So this is a self-help guide to revenue. This is something that if you're an owner-operator, you really want to tune in, put your eyes and ears on the table here. Right, so behaviors and self-awareness are the most detrimental and influential things we can do for revenue. And the great news is that you control most of them, and we together control all of them. Remember that the most important rule is that we're all teammates. 1 + 1 = 3. We're on the same team. Our goal is to generate revenue and to have customers that want to pay for trucks that deliver on time, communicate well, and are professionals. So if you're here and you're listening to this and you're part of our team, that's our goal, and it's a mutual one. We also have to understand there are things and behaviors that we can control. One of those is to over-communicate, both our team in the office as well as your check calls out on the road. Stay on top of shippers and receivers. Let's make sure we document our detention time and get that paid. There are seasons for negotiating. Right now, this probably isn't one of them. If we're waiting to beat somebody or squeeze them for an extra $300-400 on a load, we're going to lose the load to someone that will do it cheaper. We've seen this in the past, and while it is short-lived, we will continue to push the market, but we also have to know where that threshold and that breaking point is. Plan ahead. Reliable drivers can sometimes get scheduled out 2 to 3 days ahead of time, and safe money is the best money. So if we can get out on the freight boards and get you moving ahead of time, so where you can utilize your logs, spend your time doing the pre-trips, fixing the trucks, and reducing your cost, then you're making money and you're not spending as much of it. Make sure that you schedule your time off in advance. Try to give a week or two notice. Also try to schedule your 34, 40-hour break or your schedule of break time at the house to be done on the weekends. You know, when you're going through, make sure that you pick up on Friday to deliver on Monday if it's a weekend. Don't come out the house on Monday at 12 noon. Come out at 5 a.m. and deliver somewhere 6 hours down the road and pay for your weekend. Control your cost. Understand what repair facilities we can go to and be mindful of our utilization. If we're not utilizing the truck, we're not making money. Typically this time of year, just like Groundhog's Day, we take a week off for Christmas. We might overspend for our holidays, and then what happens? January comes around. We don't have revenue for the week or two prior, and we still have expenses, which means our margins hit the floor. That's why so many guys look after the beginning of the year. So make sure we do our trailer maintenance and pre-trips. We address the small issues so they don't snowball into a bigger one. If you have limits and borders on you, where you can go, what you like to haul, I don't go northeast. I don't take toll roads. I don't like to carry heavy freight. Those kind of things, you want to be mindful and pull those off. And see what happens is when you pull that off, the metrics increase on where we can go and where the freight is, and make sure we keep you in the hot markets. Notify us immediately of any delays. So this way we can get that detention. Call it 1.5 hours, knowing we can't bill till 2 hours, right? And then we also have hired people inside of our office. There's things that we've done. We've hired additional resources. We now have Crystal in the office that takes care of detention. right? Takes care of overflow, building loads, making sure that we're pursuing for the highest dollar. And we also have additional dispatch resources to try to field your calls quicker, to end up solving the problems quicker, to fully utilize your clock. We've halted our onboarding to solely focus on you as a dedicated driver to our success. Remember, be nice to your dispatchers. They have increased pressure as well. Their research, their call volume is all increasing, and it is being scrutinized by their boss. And they scrutinize themselves enough that we really don't have to look over it. They know what a winning day is. They understand when you're in a bad position. And so we need to work together to get out of that. So on spot freight, non-customer freight or non-customer freight and non-contract freight, don't ask for the rates to be high in a lower market, because you'll sit there. And the cost of sitting far outweighs the cost of taking a load that may be $100 less than you wanted. So we got the benefit of the last 6 months. So let's take the stabilization of this market and move forward. So once we get through this period, let's keep our hours of service running correctly. Let's minimize our downtime, because minutes are $100 bills, and move forward. So in closing, I want to let you know that behind every lull or slow period in Q1 is a steady and systemic growth. So stay focused, stay hungry, and stay patient. If you have any feedback, you have any questions or additional topics you want me to bring up in the next podcast, I'd love to hear them and call the office directly. 540-223-4488, extension 1002. Joy will direct you to me, and I'd love to hear your feedback. On the next episode, we're going to be focused on the analytics. State to state, outbound tenders, rejections, volumes, all the fun stuff. So make sure this week you wash your hands, you mask up, and most importantly, drive safe, and I look forward to talking to you soon.